Now that we're familiar with the basics of human resource management, let's move our attention to the employee talent war. The employee talent war is all about developing, motivating, and keeping talented employees at your retail establishment. And this is one of the biggest challenges that human resource managers face: how to keep talent at their retail establishment so we don't lose them to a competing retailer. So corporate HR departments are responsible for developing programs and policies that will attract, develop, motivate, and retain talent. And they have to do all that while doing it better than the competition. So let's start with talking about how HR managers develop talent, which is really focusing on the hiring first. So selective hiring is very important. And there's a saying in retail that says one great employee is worth 3 good employees. And that's because if you have 3 good employees, you're paying 3 people, right, to do a mediocre job. But if you hire one really great employee and pay them what they deserve, they're going to do a lot of great work for your retail establishment. So selective hiring is more than just a job application. It includes phone interviews, group interviews, personal interviews, and some retailers go to quite extremes to make sure they're hiring the right people. Zappos, in fact, offers new employees $4,000 to quit their job. And I'll explain that in a little bit more detail here. Zappos has a 4-week training period for all of their new hires. And so these new hires go through training on the assembly line. They work in packaging, they work in picking, they interact with some potential customer service opportunities. They learn about the corporate values, corporate ethics, corporate ideals. And then at the very end of that 4-week period, someone says, is this the right fit for you? And if an employee decides that Zappos is not the right fit, whether because they don't feel that they would appreciate the job or they don't think that they could fit in with the corporate ideals, they can take their $4,000 and go ahead and quit. So I want you to think about that. Why does Zappos offer their employees $4,000 to quit? And I want you to talk about it and have a conversation in the discussion board for Chapter 9 on why you think they do that and whether or not you think it works. And just so we're all on the same playing field here, on average, about 1% to 2% of trainees take that offer every year. So another question for you is whether or not that is enough. Because initially in 2008, Zappos only offered $100 for their employees to quit. Then it went up to $2,000 and now it's at $4,000. So tell me your thoughts on that in the discussion board. Another part of developing talent is training your employees. The average retail employee only receives 7 to 10 hours of training before they begin work. So do you think that that's enough? I'd be interested to hear if any of you have worked for a retail establishment and how much training you had before you went out for your first day of independent work. It is true that employees are more invested in the retailer when the company invests in them, and not just in the retail industry, in any industry. And so it's an important question that HR managers have to determine how much is enough training? How much should we invest at the beginning? There are some types of retailers that should dedicate more time to training than others need to. And so that's a question I'll pose for you to do some research on and talk about in the discussion boards. What types of retailers do you think should dedicate more upfront time to their training of new employees and why? I'll give you an example of one company, REI. REI is a retailer that has all new employees participate in a base camp orientation program. The base camp orientation program is outdoors and it puts the new employees through many outdoor challenges. And of course, when completing those outdoor challenges, the new employees have to use all of the REI products. And this type of training definitely lasts longer than 10 hours, but it gets all of their new employees very familiar with all of their products, or at least their most popular products, so that when customers come in, they can talk to the associates and learn about the products, and the associates are able to provide knowledgeable information because they interact with the products themselves. So we've talked about selective hiring, we've talked about training. Let's talk about motivating talent. An employee's goals often vary from a retailer's goals. And so, as we've already discussed, human resource management has a responsibility to coordinate and align those goals. So, let's think about this for a second. What is an employee's goals when they get a job at a retail establishment? Primarily, they're there to make money. What's the retailer's goal when they hire an employee? They want the retailer to help them earn a profit. And so those goals are slightly different. And so HR has to decide, how do we motivate our employee to help us meet our goals of making a profit? And so there are a couple of ways that we can motivate our talent. The first is through written policies and supervision. And this is a packet that every new employee gets when they start their job. And it includes things like, here's what our attendance policy is. If you don't come to work, you're going to get fired. If you do come to work every day, you might get a little more say in requesting days off. So that policy is in there. Return policies are in there. How employees are supposed to handle returns to the retail store. And these written policies generally offer very little flexibility, but it does give the employee the general guidelines they need in order to receive a paycheck. Another way to motivate talent is through compensation-based incentives. Compensation includes not just your basic check, but retailers can do other things to incentivize their employees as well. So they can offer commission, which is a percentage based on sales. And we'll talk about commission a little bit later in Chapter 16. Another type of compensation-based incentive is a bonus. A bonus is awarded periodically based on individual performance. Some retailers offer profit sharing, which is a cash bonus based on the firm's profits. And these incentives will motivate the employees to go above and beyond their basic job requirements, because they know that if they do a great job, they could potentially make a higher paycheck. A third way to motivate talent is through an organizational culture. An organizational culture is a set of values, traditions, and customs that guide employee behavior. Now, these traditions, these customs, they aren't written down. They're not formally documented, but they're developed and maintained through stories and symbols, and new employees learn about the organizational culture from the seasoned employees. So it might be things like what clothes are appropriate to wear, where you should park your car in the parking lot, and what you should call your boss, right? Does he need a Mr.? Does he need just a first name? Does she prefer to not be spoken to, right? So you could just kind of pick up these little hints and tips. And the more strong your organizational culture is, the more motivated your employees are going to be. So now that we know how to develop and motivate talent, let's talk about keeping talent in our stores. Keeping talent, of course, is the goal of reducing our turnover. We know that turnover reduces sales and increases costs for the retailer. So I have a video that I will post in the Chapter 9 content folder that I want you to watch on employee turnover. And so when you take a break from this video, you can do that, and then you can come back and see these numbers here. But just to give you a heads up of what you're going to see in that video, the average cost to replace an employee is about 16% of their annual salary. So for a $10 an hour employee, it would take almost $3,300 to replace that employee. And that $3,300 is locked up in the job search looking for an employee. It includes the time it takes to interview applicants. It includes the costs it takes to train the new employee and get them up to speed. And it includes the opportunity cost of losing potential sales while you're training the new employee. So replacing one employee is very expensive. So the average cost to replace an employee is about 16% of their salary. If those employees are making more than $30,000 a year, it goes up to about 20% of their salary in order to replace that. So we're talking $6,000 or more to replace an employee. So think about Walmart for a second. each Walmart store is about 500 employees, and they make about $10 an hour, which is an annual salary of $20,000. So we know that turnover for a large retail establishment is about 5% annually. So meaning that Walmart loses about 25 employees voluntarily every year. So if you take that $3,300, that's 16% the cost to replace, Walmart is spending $82,500 to replace employees every year. So that's a lot of money, even for a Walmart. And so they have to figure out ways to retain that talent and keep them in the store. And there are really two ways that a retailer can work to keep talent in the store. One method is through what we call empowerment. And empowerment is a process in which managers share power and decision-making authority with their employees. So authority and responsibility are transferred, and that gives the employee an attitude of respect and trust toward the retailer because the employee feels that the retailer trusts them. When employees have the authority to make decisions, they're more confident in their own abilities, and that makes them more committed to the firm's success. So empowerment is things like allowing your employees to remake a meal if the customer doesn't like it or if it comes out wrong. Empowerment includes letting your employees conduct return transactions or refunds without management approval. So empowerment transfers that authority and helps the employee respect the employer. And the theory states that when the employee respects the retailer, they're likely to do a better job and stay at the retail establishment. So another way that we can help keep our talent is through engagement. So engagement helps us retain our talent in many different ways. So a few ways we can try to engage our employees. We can reduce the status differences. So if we have a Jeans Day Friday, even our CEO needs to wear jeans. So put everybody on the same level. Put everybody on a first name basis. Another way to engage your employees is to promote from within. So commit as a retailer to training your employees and make them feel that they are likely to get a promotion or be promoted to a different job or a different level of job within the retail establishment. Another way to increase engagement is to provide a work-life balance. Two-income households have become the standard. We know that single-parent households are growing, and so it's very difficult to juggle life and work. So a lot of retailers are starting to offer some perks, and offering perks and benefits can be expensive, but it's usually less than the cost of losing your great employees. So some things that retailers are doing to provide a work-life balance are allowing employees to pick the days that they need off or have a say in the shift that they're going to work. And that helps to make the employee feel engaged and therefore more likely to stay with the retail company. So some retailers are providing benefits such as health, dental, vision, and retirement. Some will offer other convenience benefits such as gym memberships or free lunches, activities for the family, ways to kind of, again, make that employee feel really engaged. And some retailers use social media to try to engage their employees as well. So if you've worked for a retailer, how has that retailer tried to engage and empower you as an employee in an effort to try to retain you at that establishment? I'd love to hear some of your stories and your thoughts in the discussion board for Chapter 9.